I am Learning Hub.
Hi there. So today we're going to be looking at fractions. Now, what is a fraction? A fraction is just part of a whole or equal parts of a whole. So when you hear the fraction 1 over 2, 1 over 2 basically just means you have an object and you share it into two equal parts. One of those parts is called half. So fractions are parts of a whole. Now, there are different types of fractions. We have three types of fractions. We have our proper fractions, we have our improper fractions, and we have our mixed fractions. Now, what is the difference between these three types of fractions? I'll tell you. Now, if I was to carry a baby, for example, that's easy, isn't it? Because I'm bigger than the baby. Now, that's what a proper fraction is. A proper fraction means that the number on the very top is smaller than the number underneath it. And so the number underneath it is able to properly carry the number on top of it. It's called a proper fraction. Now, what if I ask that baby to carry me? What do you think will happen? Now, that's exactly what an improper fraction is. It means that a bigger number is being carried by a smaller number. It's called an improper fraction. Now, we have another type of fraction that we call a mixed number. Our mixed number contains a whole number and a fraction. For example, 1 2 over 4. This is called a mixed fraction. All right, we're going to be looking at the different parts of a fraction. Now, the top part of a fraction is called the numerator. And the bottom part is called the denominator. So the fraction is made up of a numerator and a denominator. Now, your numerator tells you how many parts you're looking at, and your denominator tells you how many parts that object was divided into. For example, half means that a whole was divided into two, and we're looking at only one out of the two parts of that fraction. So that's the difference between your numerator and your denominator. All right, so here we have two squares. One is divided into half, and the other one is divided into quarters. Now, we have to represent one part of this square, it's going to be 1 out of 2 parts. So that's what half means. To represent one part of this square, which is divided into 4, it's going to be 1 out of 4 parts. Now let's talk about equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions means fractions that have different values but represent the exact same thing. So 1 over 2 of this fraction is going to be the same as 2 over 4. So 1 over 2 is going to be the same as 2 over 4. Now, how do we get equivalent fractions and how do we solve equivalent fraction questions? 1 over 2 is a fraction. Now, to find the equivalent fraction for 1 over 2, you have to find, if you're going to be multiplying the top by a number, you must multiply the bottom by the exact same number to get what the equivalent fraction would be. Now, there are many different equivalent fractions for 1 over 2. One of them would be, if I multiply 1 by 2, I have 2 over, I multiply 2 by 2, 4, which is what we've shown here. That half is the exact same thing as 2 over 4. So that's an equivalent fraction. Another equivalent fraction of half, say we multiply the top and the bottom by, say, 4. So this will be multiplied by 4. This will also be multiplied by 4. An equivalent fraction for 1 over 2 is also 4 over 8. Now, this is how you find equivalent fractions. Now, if you're given a bigger fraction and you're asked to find a smaller equivalent fraction of that fraction, so you ask yourself, what can I divide the top of this fraction and the bottom of this fraction by? I can divide by 2. So 20 divided by 2, and I would divide 24 by 2 as well. 20 divided by 2 is 10 over 24 divided by 2 is 12. So one of the equivalent fractions for 20 over 24 is 10 over 12. Now, as you see, 10 over 12 is not the smallest fraction that we can derive from this fraction. Now, this is what we call reducing of fractions. Reducing of fractions means that you're given a bigger fraction and you want to divide it to the lowest possible number that it can be to still have the same value. So I have 10 over 12. But there's a number that can divide 10. There's also, and that same number can also divide 12. Now, to simplify or to reduce your fractions, you must keep reducing these fractions. That means dividing the top and the bottom by the exact same number until you can no longer divide them by the same number. Then you've gotten the least or the simplest form of that fraction. I have this fraction 10 over 12, right? Now I can divide both sides by 2. So 10 divided by 2 and 12 also divided by 2. Now 10 divided by 2 is 5 and 12 divided by 2 is 6. Now 5 and 6, they have no factors in common. So there is no number aside from 1 that can divide 5 and also divide 6. So the simplest form of this fraction 10 over 12 is 5 over 6. Now let's try it with a bigger fraction. So let's come back to this fraction that we started with, which is 20 over 24. Now I want to reduce this to the simplest form. Now how can I reduce 20 and 24 to the simplest form? Let's say I divide by 2. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 24 divided by 2 is 12. I can still reduce this fraction because there's still another number that can divide both the top and the bottom. So I say divide by 2 again. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 12 divided by 2 is 6. At this point, there's no number aside from 1 that can divide both the top and the bottom. So this is my fraction in its simplest form. Now let's try with another number, very random number. So let's try our 12 over 20, for example. Look at these two fractions. So they are both even numbers. Both even numbers means that these two numbers can be divided by 2. So we're reducing these fractions. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Now this is 6 and this is 10. These two numbers are also divisible by 2. So we use 2 again. Remember, in reducing fractions, you're dividing until there is no number aside from 1 that can divide both the top and the bottom. Then you know you've gotten your fraction in its simplest form. So I'm going to divide this by 2. I would have 3. I divide this by 2. I have 5. Now I have 3 over 5. There's no number aside from 1 that can divide these two numbers without a remainder. So my fraction 12 over 20 in its simplest form is 3 over 5. So remember I told you that we have 3 different types of fractions. We have proper fractions, for example, 1 over 2, where the numerator is smaller than the denominator. Then we have improper fractions, for example, 3 over 2, where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. And then we have mixed fractions, where you have a whole number and a fraction. So this is a mixed fraction or a mixed number. Now, we can convert between improper fractions to mixed numbers, and then from mixed numbers back to improper fractions. And that's what I'm going to be showing you. So I have a fraction like 3 over 2. How do I convert this to a mixed fraction? So you say 3 over 2, you can look at it as 3 divided by 2. So how many groups of 2 will I find in 3? That's 1. Now that answer you get is your whole number, which is 1. Now if I take out one group of 2 from 3, what do I have left? Just 1. That becomes your new numerator, and then your denominator remains the same. Your original denominator doesn't change, so it's 1 over 2. I'll do another one. I have 4 over 3. Now, how many groups of 3 can I take out of 4? So 4 divided by 3, if I have 4 items and I divide it by 3, I can only have one group of 3. So 4 divided by 3 is 1. That becomes my whole number. And then my remainder is 1. That becomes my new numerator. And then my denominator remains the same. It doesn't change. Now let's try one where our whole number is more than 1. So 15 over 7. Now let's look at this. How many groups of 7 can I find in 15? Or 15 divided by 7 would be what? Now it would be 2 remainder something, right? Now that 2 is my whole number, so 2. And then if I take out 2 groups of 7, which is 14 from 15, what I have left is 1. That becomes my new numerator, 1, over my denominator doesn't change. What it was before is what it's still going to be, which is 7. So 2, 1 over 7 is the same thing as 15 over 7. So this is how you convert from improper fraction to a mixed number. All right, so now that we're done with that, I want to show you how to convert from a mixed fraction into an improper fraction. And you might be asking, why would I need to convert from a mixed number to an improper fraction? Now, if you had to do a fraction addition, multiplication, or division, and you're given a whole number, for example, you're told half divided by 3/4, or 1.5 rather, divided by 3/4. So there's a whole, there's a mixed fraction there divided by another fraction. You're going to have to first convert that mixed fraction to an improper fraction so that you can do your addition, your multiplication, your division, or your subtraction. Now, um, let's let's take a random whole number or a random mixed fraction. So I have 3/1/4. I want to convert this to an improper fraction. Now, what you do is 4 times 3 is 12, right? So you're going to say your denominator times your whole number plus your numerator gives you your new numerator. Don't worry, I'll explain. It's not that, I'll explain. Now, 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. That is my new numerator. Over my denominator, it doesn't change. It remains the same always. 4. Let's try another one. 5/1/7. So a whole number times denominator. So 7 times 5 plus your numerator gives you a new numerator. So 7 times 5 is 35. 35 plus 1 is 36 over, exactly. Denominator doesn't change. It remains the same. I do one more. 2/1/7. Now, 7 times 2 is 14 plus 1 is 15. That is my new numerator. Over my denominator remains the same. It never changes, 7. Now look at this. When we converted from our improper to mixed number, that's what we had, right? 15/7 is 2/1/7. Now we converted 2/1/7 to an improper fraction and we landed back at 15/7. So really, that's it. That's how you convert between an improper fraction and a mixed number.
I am learning with I am Learning Hub.